The love of money and contentment are absolute opposites. And if you're wondering where you are on the spectrum, and I'd even give you that there's a spectrum. If you put you're totally content for your station in life financially, or you're totally unhappy and all you can think about, if I get some more money, I'll be happy. Where on the scale are you on that? Now, I realize everybody would like a little bit more in the bank. But how well are you functioning with what you have?
Good morning. We are reading this morning from Proverbs chapter 3, and I will be starting with verse 5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and depart from evil. It will be health to your flesh and strength to your bones. Honor the Lord with your possessions and with the first fruits of all your increase, so your barns will be filled with plenty and your vats will overflow with new wine. Amen.
We're talking about Bible budgeting. Now, I want you to know immediately, I'm not going to take myself so serious on this, okay? Because this is one of those areas that we can get downright offended about when you go talking about my business. Nobody likes me, the preacher, much less anybody else, getting into your business, okay? You don't want me getting into your business. So we're going to talk in broad strokes about principles we find in Bible budgeting. And when we're talking about budgeting, we're just basically talking about finances in general. And I'm going to explain a little bit more about that. So we've got a couple of tablecloth issues to set up going through this series. And this series is going to run for 4 weeks. This is the first of 4. So the tablecloth issues and essential principle today. But I got something I wanted to say. You've heard this before, okay? But I want you to think about it in light of managing your budget. Hold it. Managing your budget is, how would you fill in that blank? Essential, okay. Managing your budget is good business, wise, important. All those things are true, but the tablecloth issue of this moment is that managing your budget is 20% of what you know. And what is the 80%? Exactly. I'm so glad our treasurer just said that. Managing your budget is 20% of what you know and 80% of what you do. It's your behavior that determines how you manage your budget. You can have anything on paper, but if you don't do what you've set out to do, your budget's no good. So with that in mind, let me ask you this. How's your budget going? Pretty good. Praise the Lord. Could it go better? Or there needs to be some changes? Without raising your hand, no show of hands here. If you had to do some changing about your budget, whether in what you do, how much you have, what you do with what you have, if there's something in your budget life that needs changing, make a mental note right now. In fact, you can turn it on, write it down in very small print so that somebody couldn't read it over your shoulder. And write it on the back of your worship bulletin. Something that you know that would help. I'm not saying, okay, get a 50% raise. All right, everybody would vote for that. But if there's something you could change about your financial situation right now, what would it be? Something that you could do. With that in mind, I'll remind you of something I have said many times. If nothing changes, nothing changes. So let's just look at this in a big picture of what budgeting is about. And I'm going to give you some definitions, and I'm going to give you one essential principle that is absolutely imperative for managing your budget. And if you can walk away with this one principle today, there might be something you can walk away going, well, I might be able to change that. So if nothing changes, nothing changes. All right, first thing, let's look at some definitions to know and to do. Now, the know and do, okay? All right, if managing your budget is 20% of what you know and 80% of what you do, we're going to walk through these things about, okay, what we know about it and what we're going to do about it. That's what we're looking at. So what do you know? What should you do? And I've gone through some definitions here, and I've adapted these from Merriam-Webster.com. That's one of my dictionary go-tos. There's a lot of them out there. The reputation is obvious. And so I have adapted some of these directly. For example, the first definition I'm going to give you is money. Okay, just some tablecloth issues you got to get. Money, according to Merriam-Webster, is a medium of exchange or a measure of value or a means of payment. So, and we know what money is. Well, all of us have somewhere, or some of you don't carry the cash. I carry cash, or you keep it on a card, or, of course, there's always the Starbucks app that works just fine on my phone. And so anyway, but money is what we transaction in there. It's what we exchange, okay? If that's what it is, and we know what it is, what do you need to know from this? The 20% that you need to know about money is that's what you spend. Okay? No brainer. Okay? That money, that's what you spend. That's the 20%. But what's the 80% here? You have to work for what you spend. That's why we're talking about the kids. I mean, they don't have a clue about, where that money comes from, from their mama. There were the dinky-doos down there, but just very close past that age right there, I personally think, personal opinion is that we need to be training them that to get cash, to get money, it is earned. Now, there are times that are given, but there's also times that it's earned. And I hope that piggy bank is full from where she's collected it from working. So, it's what you spend. Now, if you're retired and you're not earning what you have worked for it in the past, so it still counts, okay? Whether it's just Social Security or you got your little nest eggs. So that's what that money is, okay? Second definition we're going to talk about is finances. I want you to understand what finances is. Finances is and again, Merriam-Webster, thank you, the money or other resources, the money of a group or individual or government or business, or even a family. It is the money we're talking about. Your finances is your money, and how you manage your finances is what we're going to be talking about quite a bit. So that's what finances are. It's just the money itself. Now, what do you need to know? What's the 20% on that? How much do you have to spend? Now, that is an essential question. Now, unless, of course, you don't ever spend more than you have. But if you don't know how much you have, you can write it down. I'm not a prophet or a son of a prophet. If you don't know how much you have, you've overspent, at least in the past, or will in the future. So to know is important how much you have to spend. But what is the do? What is the 80% factor on this? Don't spend more than you have. That's a no-brainer, isn't it? It's real simple. You know your finances and know what it is. You got 20%. You got it. 80% of it, don't spend more than you have. Third word I want you to understand is budget. Budget is the amount of money that is available, is required. And it is assigned, according to Merriam-Webster, assigned to a particular purpose. Now, we know what a church budget is right here because we vote on one every year, and we not only have a one-page version of it, we have a detailed 3 or 4-page version of it, and just every dollar that comes through the plate, we have an assigned number for what we're going to spend on that. And that's what we need to know, where you're going to spend it. Now, this is the part where we get a little fuzzy. Just, without, okay, I don't want to show of hands, but I want you to ask this question. How many of you actually have a family budget that is actually on paper? Good, that's good. That helps. And that is something you need to do. In fact, since you know what a budget is, I would tell everybody in the room, regardless of your station of life, you need to write down what's coming in and what's going out. You need to keep up with it. The best part about it is to plan ahead so you know how much you can have. Know where you spend it. That's what you know. Know where you spend it. Do. Every dollar that comes in, give it a name. At least that's what Ramsey says. And Dave Ramsey is just one of the resources on this. But give every dollar you have a name. Now, the fourth thing here I want you to understand. And I'm not going to talk a lot about this right now, but just sort of hit it because we got to understand what we're talking about. And that is the word debt. Now, for this one right here, I adapted those, abbreviated some of the things Merriam-Webster said. But when I went to the Merriam-Webster.com, which is, there's a dash in between there, but I looked at that and went, oh my goodness, they're not going to believe this. So I have verbatim what Merriam-Webster.com has for the word debt. You ready? The very first definition, number one, it got a number one right by it. You ready for this? A debt is sin, trespass. The example they gave was forgive of our debts. Forgive us of our debts. Okay, yeah, we know about that. That's the Lord's Prayer. Well, the one that we call the Lord's Prayer, that's really the disciples' prayer. It's His prayer. And we are to make it our prayer. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Okay, so you go, phew. Okay, so it's not just talking about all our sin. But when I saw that, I went, that's funny. Debt is sin. 2, the second definition, something that is owed, an obligation, as in unable to pay off his debts, owe them a debt of gratitude, and criminals' debt to society is the way they use that. An obligation, all of those are good examples. Oh, obviously, what we're talking about here is unable to pay off the debts, that kind of debt. All right, number 3, Merriam-Webster.com. And this one's a little bit longer, so hang with me on this. A state of being under obligation to pay or repay someone or something in return for something received. I'm going to say that again. If you want to look it up, just go to Merriam-Webster.com, okay? But this one and the something owed, this is sort of what a debt is, okay? A state of being under obligation to pay or repay someone or something like a bank in return for something received. And that could be a loan or a house or a car or anything else. So that's, again, from Merriam-Webster. The examples they gave is the third is a state of owing. The second one was deeply in debt to creditors. So, as we look at this, I thought about this. Okay, so what is the one thing we need to know? What is the 20% that we need to know? And I just went back to Merriam-Webster and I said the 20% here is the very first thing. Debt is sin. I didn't think that'd work either. But you get what a debt is. Debt is something that you owe. Now, not paying it back might be a sin. So what do we need to know? Debt, okay? But so what do we do? We need to know what debt is, but what do we do, okay? ask yourself this question. This is all I'm asking you to do for now, because we'll talk more about this in the weeks ahead. All I'm asking you to do about debt is ask your question to yourself. Do I want to be in debt? I want you to ask that to yourself. Do you want to be in debt? Now, you can define debt several different ways, and you can say a debt is something I can't pay. I'm not sure I'm good with that one. A debt is I don't owe anybody anything. That would be the broadest stroke. Or I'm not in debt to anybody that I cannot immediately liquidate and pay them off. And there will be some that would use that as a definition. But according to what you would be happy with, according to what you think God would be happy with, all I'm asking you to do is to think, do I want to be in debt? So, there's the tablecloth issues. Now, the one other tablecloth issue I have is this one simple point, and that is, what is the essential principle? The essential principle for your finances, for your budget, for, if you would, even to the point of Bible budgeting. I think this is the most essential principle you can have. Are you ready for what it is? It's going to be surprising. Contentment. Yeah, now think about this. Contentment. All the financial principles that you know, even if you got a master's degree and a CPA, you know all the how to configure it, you know all how to make it all talk and analyze it and everything. The bottom line is, for us, especially thinking Bible budgeting, the bottom line is the most important thing for you to get a handle on your personal budgeting is this principle: contentment. If you can get a handle on this, you can live debt-free in time. I promise you, you can. Let me just look at a couple of verses here and we'll close out. Hebrews 13:5 says, according to the New American Standard, make sure that your character is free from the love of money. Now, you think about that. Free from the love of money, and he gives the opposite of that. Being content with what you have. Free from the love of money, being content with what you have. For he himself says, God, I will never desert you, nor I will ever forsake you. God is in control. So, free from the love of money. This literally is not loving money. It is translated in some without covetousness. It's not not greedy or of filthy lucre. So the love of money, what do we mean by that? There are probably very few of you would say, I love money. I just love it. No, nobody's supposed to say that. Or some of you might say, I hate being in debt. But when you're focused on money, whether it's having it, not having enough, being indebted to it, there is a focus of loving it there that goes to the sin level. And I could say whether you have a chunk of money in the bank or all you have is debt, you can still have this love of money. The proof to that is because the opposite is contentment. Are you content with your financial station of life? Now, that does not mean that you should not have a drive to better yourself. Does not mean that you should not work for your next raise. And the saying is, you always want to dress for the position that you're working toward, not the position you're in. And that means if everybody's wearing blue jeans around work, you wear nicer slacks. If everybody's wearing open collar, you wear a tie. If everybody's wearing a tie, you wear a coat. If they're wearing a coat, break out the tuxedo. No, I'm kidding. But you see what I'm saying? And it's not just a dress for success kind of thing. But you want to work like you're making the raise that you want before you get it. Not out of love of money, but out of contentment. Being content means literally to be strong enough or satisfied or contented. The love of money and contentment are absolute opposites. And if you're wondering where you are on this spectrum, and I'd even give you that there's a spectrum. If you put you're totally content for your station in life financially, or you're totally unhappy and all you can think about, if I get some more money, I'll be happy. Where on the scale are you on that? Now, I realize everybody would like a little bit more in the bank. But how well are you functioning with what you have? Another thing about this contentment is that contentment comes from I'm not happy with what I've got. I got to have something else is better, newer, or I just want it. The classic example of discontent is the impulse buy. You don't even know you're discontented until you see something else you want. It's bigger and better. That's the best reason never to walk in to a car showroom until you are prepared financially on that. I mean, some of you may not care, but I walk in there, I just get the heebie-jeebies. I love doing it, but I have to manage that discontent that it creates. If I go in there, all right, cars, we like cars, okay? There's a certain amount of, me and Joe have done this, that we go just for the fun of it. When the new Corvettes went out. Me and Joe drove all the way to Atlanta to go through 2 or 3 different Corvette or Chevrolet dealerships just to sit in them, just to look at them, okay? And we knew that we were not driving away with a car. When I started, my Mazda was hitting 10 years old, and I started thinking, okay, now is it time to trade up? And so I'd walk up on a car lot. First thing I would say to somebody, the salesman walk up, I am not buying a car today. And one guy had the nerve to say, that's what they all say. And I just snickered. I said, you wait. And I did not buy a car from him that day or any day. But, you know, impulse buying a car, everybody's going to say, okay, that's not a good idea. You don't want to take your payments and double them all of a sudden, or go from no payment to a $450 payment. Nobody wants to do that just because, oh yeah, I think I can get that by. But yet it happens. Those salesmen plan on it happening the moment you step foot on their property. Contentment keeps you from doing that. I'm happy with what I got. Discontent, not being content with where you are, means that you look at every single thing you walk by. You can't go through Target but saying, I want one of those. Another thing about contentment, look at 1 Timothy 6. And I'm not going to read this entire passage, but I would encourage you to do 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 6 through 11. Starting in verse 6, it says, but godliness actually is a means of great gain when accompanied by contentment. Now, what that means is living a righteous life has great gain if you're contented in it. If you are not contented in it, it will burn you. And we go back to their debt is sin, or at least could be. But godliness is actually a means of great gain when accomplished by contentment. For we have brought nothing into this world, and we cannot take anything out of it. Verse 8, if you have food and covering, this shall be enough, you shall be content. But those who want to get rich fall into temptation with a snare, many foolish and harmful desires which plunge men into ruin and destruction. He is saying right here exactly what I'm telling you. Contentment is being satisfied with where you are. But wanting more will ruin you. And again, I'm not talking about not wanting to improve your life. I'm talking about being so discontented that you are miserable where you are. I will tell you this. Some of you will not believe me. Your current job situation. Faithfulness is usually rewarded. There's always a situation on that. But what's most important about your job? How much you get paid? It's not as far as happiness in your job. It's not what you get paid. Happiness in your job. What you do, it's not what you do. You want to be happy with what you get paid. You want to be happy with what you do. The most important element about your current job is not what, but who you do it with. And you think about this. You can be making enough money, doing what you love, and working with a jerk and come home every day unhappy. Every day. And you can come home and say, it's not worth this, but I don't have an option. Nobody should be paid to put up with that. You wouldn't believe what my boss said to me today. I'm telling you, if you cannot maintain a contentment in your job situation, you need to make a change. I would say maybe even a cut in pay to do it. Now, I'm not going to tell you to do that. It does depend on your financial situation. But you can come to a point with being content, even working with a sorry boss. Because all of that reaction is really between your ears and in your heart. If you recognize you are where God has placed you, you are there, God is in control, and then you're leaving miserable from work every day. So that's the what. What do you do? 80% of it is what you're going to do about it in your own heart, in your own mind, who you do it with. And I've seen people do this. I've seen people absolutely miserable in their job, and a switch is flipped. Something happens that they realize who they're working with doesn't control their attitudes. And without any change of position, co-workers, or pay, you can become content in the job. Contentment, folks. Contentment is the most significant thing about your finances. Look at verse 10 here. The love of money in 1 Timothy. Love of money is the root of all sorts of evil. Some by longing for it have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. Loving money, not being content, will ruin you spiritually. The bottom line is, if you're asking yourself, or saying, I don't love money, but you're not content with your station in life or where you are or how much money you got, I'm not talking about lack of ambition here. Content with the station of your life right now. Verse 10, for the love of money. Love of money is literally means fond of silver. So it's translated covetousness. The opposite of love of money is found in Hebrews 13, is free from the love of money. The root of all sorts of evil, literally root here. Evil here, when it says evil, it's not talking about a demon or the devil or anything like that. It's literally talking about troublesome, injurious, destruction, or just plain bad, or falls into the department, stuff happens. All sorts of stuff happens kind of things. And it says, and some by longing for it have wandered or gone astray from the faith. That longing is to give oneself up to the love of money. And you come to the point and just get to the point where I've got to do this. I've got to do what it takes. And you're not happy until you do. And pierced through themselves with many griefs. Griefs is consuming grief, consuming pain, consuming sorrow. And I'll make this clear. Money is not the issue here. The love of money is the issue. How do you know the difference? If you're wondering yourself, maybe you need to evaluate personally your attitude toward money in general. So, what do you now know? Well, now you know that the essential principle of budgeting is contentment. It's not a degree, it's not more money, it's not less money, it's contentment. So, that's what you know. So what should you do? What is the 80% walkaway on this? Put away anything that will take contentment away from you, including desires, priorities even. Philippians 4, write the reference down, verses 6 and 7. Allow me just to read these in conclusion, okay? We'll start with the context is verse 4. One of the favorite verses often is, rejoice in the Lord always. And again I say, rejoice. Let your gentle spirit be known to all men. The Lord is near. Verse 6. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything, by prayer and supplications with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. Pour your heart out to Him about your discontent. Verse 7. And the peace of God, which surpasses all comprehension, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. When you give it all to God, God is in control. You give it to Him. You don't have to have that discontent if you know that He's got it. When you give to Him, the one thing that happens when you give it to Him is peace. If you don't have peace about your finances, you need to give it to Him. Now, finances has got a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot of things to it. And I would tell you a couple of things just right off to encourage you. If you are really in financial trouble, if you're struggling with your finances and you don't know what to do, I know people that can help. And I can connect you with somebody if you're willing to spread your books out and let somebody else look at them and say, okay, you can do this and this and this and make these changes and begin to the path. If you just need some encouragement, that is my goal for the next 3 weeks, is to encourage you to just get in line with God, with your finances, and biblical budgeting. God is in control. Give it to Him, and the peace will come. So what's the walk away here? Managing your budget is 20% of what you know and 80% of what you do. Thomas? Managing your budget is 20% of what you know and 80% of what you do. But wait, here's the walk away. So what are you going to do? It starts with the commitment. A total abandonment. God, I don't know what to do about this. I'm in so much financial trouble, or I'm always discontent. It could be that some of you are living fairly well and you have money in the bank, but every time you turn around, you got to get the bigger and the best and the newest and the greatest. And it turns out that it's not what you want. All the money in the world cannot buy contentment. You have to. Paul says, I have found to be content in whatever station of life I am, both with and without. That is the station that you have to come to. You will not have victory. You will not have peace in your path and walking toward the Lord until you figure out this contentment issue with your finances. Would you bow your heads, please? I know some of you may be thinking that the preacher's getting all in my business. I'm really not. I challenge you. Study the scripture for yourself. See if what I'm saying is so or not. And if God is in control, give him control over your life. And release that discontent. Find that peace. And Lord, I pray for these folks now, for each of us, that we would know the freedom to trust you in all things, and especially with our budget. Help me, oh God, personally. Help each of these folks to lean on you wholly and completely. Not just for the balance in the checkbook, but for the peace that only you can give. So we turn it over to you and trust you, Lord. Even as a corporate body, Lord, we trust you with a minor air conditioner problem or a complete overhaul. And we'll give you the glory for the provision you've always provided for, but especially for the peace within.